You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seatbelts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty, guys. Welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal Cast, and this week we are again holding ourselves accountable to our hype previews, as we tend to do. And this week we are looking back at Aetherdrift, which, of course, we have our over-under just rights. Now that we have the gift of hindsight, time, and I think 3 more releases or something ridiculous like that, how right or wrong were we? So with that, let's take it away.
Yep. So for my overhyped, I had Hashiton Scarab's Fist. That card was $20-ish when we released the hype episodes to Patreon, and right now it's sitting at about a whole $3. But my concern for this card was actually the push it was giving to other cards, specifically cards like Bone Miser, Unfulfilled Desires, Tortured Existence, like those cards. And when we take a look at Rec overall, we see the first 2 cards I mentioned, Bone Miser and Unfulfilled Desires, in rather low percentage play, and Tortured Existence as a high synergy card. So 2/3 of these cards just weren't getting a push at all. And it was getting a push, but not long lasting.
Yeah,
and when
not a real push.
Yeah, and when we look at CEDH versions of the deck, only Tortured Existence makes an appearance, and even then, it's kind of sporadic. So what we have seen is that this commander's popularity sank like a rock, and the specs for the, quote, prescribed method of build, unquote, sunk even further, and thus my outlook and concern were pretty well placed for what this was doing. And when I did a little bit of research, and I'll put this in the show notes, Comedian is actually playing Tortured Existence in one of his lists. It's called Hash Brown something or other.
Yeah.
Hash Brown's thrown in the trash. But when that's not even the most popular build of this deck on Moxfield, those lists just aren't playing Tortured Existence at all. And nobody that plays CEDH is playing either Unfulfilled Desires or Bone Miser, period, ended. So my concern was well placed, and I kind of considered that a win because I was very wary of people in finance, especially trying to tell you how to play Commander. That just doesn't work. People need to figure it out for themselves. And while all these cards did look good, it was going to take real people that play Commander to actually investigate and do the legwork, not people with a vested finance interest to tell you what to do to build the deck.
And I think the other thing, and I think this was something we both touched on as well, with this card, was if there was one that was going to work, we both thought it would be Tortured Existence, not because of how good it was in that deck, but because it was ancillary in so many other like Reanimator strategies, stuff like that, that it could realistically use a little bit of a push. And I think that's more what happened based on the adoption now. I do know some people in the CEDH community were saying it could be very good, and then after testing they realized no, it's just not. So good call on that one.
For those that are curious, I have to look it up myself. Tortured Existence.
It's a common.
Okay. So it's from Stronghold. I'll bring this up.
And the list.
Yep. So it's an enchantment for 1 black, and it says 1 black, choose and discard a creature card. Return that card from your graveyard. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So basically what you do is you just pay the 1 black, you discard a card, you trigger Hashiton, and then you bring something back. So you just kind of have this feedback loop going of 2 creatures. You can go infinite. Like, that's kind of what we thought was going to happen. You just make infinite mana with something like Cloud Affairs or whatever under a Mana Flare, or maybe something like Peregrine Drake, which untaps 4, and you can just kind of go from there. And then lo and behold, because of that combo ability, that's the one card that made a difference. You came at this from a different angle. I think your card you were looking at kind of all over between Standard and Commander.
Yes, my card for over was Radiant Lotus, and I said when we recorded this, $30 is too much for a Lotus with this many hoops to jump through. It's not going to see play in, like, your mud lists in Commander, I said it wouldn't be very heavily adopted because, frankly, sacrifice one or more artifacts, choose a color. Target player adds 3 mana for each artifact sacrificed this way.
Yep.
At 6 mana, that's an insane cost. If this was like 3 mana, okay, that's fair. I didn't think it was well designed. I thought there was a lot of hype around it because it's a Lotus, and every time there's a new Lotus that screams, like, when you read it in a vacuum, battle cruiser EDH, people hop all over it, and it was not. No, it's just not that good. And now it's sitting at not $30 but $5 with 763 listings, and the sales velocity is like 20 per day. Not great. Whereas, some of the other cards from this set are sitting at like 40 to 50 per, and those are still EDH cards. But I never thought this card was as good as everyone thought it was. I don't even think it's the best Lotus we've gotten in the last 10 years. It's just not. I'd take Gilded Lotus over this.
Agreed.
All day. It's not going to see play in Legacy. It's way too slow for Modern. It obviously is nigh unplayable in Vintage because too slow. It's just not good. Mm-hmm. And I think both of us said that all of the hype around this seemed to be around, oh my God, I can't wait to have a new Lotus, or like maybe 2 people on the entirety of the internet screaming about Lotus Tribal. But
that's fair.
It's not good.
Yeah. Nope.
And this was definitely a win. It's pretty much disappeared. Mm-hmm. I don't know anyone that's plays it, that wants one, or anything. They're all just kind of sitting. Like, the interest in this card is non-existent now, and I'm glad that was correct.
Yeah, I've got nothing to add because I thought this was a bad card to start with for all the reasons you said. Yeah, like, it's just miserable. For moving on to the next set of cards, underhyped. My underhyped card was Ketramo's The New Dawn. And looking back on it, people are like, was that card ever underhyped? Yes, it was. We looked at this for about 2 days as a community and then just off to the next thing, because that's how set releases work now. Everybody gets a card. It comes at you in a week and just hype up and down. The hype for this card should have just kind of existed throughout the entirety of the hype season, or for the pre-release season, and I would have put it in just right if that was the case. Yeah. When we recorded the episode, Ketramo's was $28 and change. It's now $27 and change, so we didn't see any just kind right. of... Yeah, exactly. This was a just right call, and that's where, like I said, where I would have had it. Now, the reason why it stayed that way, stayed at this price, is because we saw the rise of a deck called Orzhov Sewers in Modern, and I couldn't tell you why it's Sewers. You're just kind of working with...
It doesn't use Sewers of Estark, and that makes me angry.
Yeah. With Overlord of the Balmerk and some other odds and ends that interact with the graveyard pretty favorably, but whatever. And then we also saw a number of Ketramos fueled decks over the last few months come up in Modern outside of that Orzhov deck, but I don't want to take that as a win just yet, that this card was underhyped and it will be played as much as it will be into the future, as a lot of the success of Ketramos decks in Modern was based on their Breach matchup. Thus, with the recent banning, that was Monday, the week before as we were recording this, I really don't know how things will actually look for the future of Modern. So after the bannings, we didn't really talk a lot about Modern because we're coming into a new RCQ cycle, and attempting to guess what is going to be good is very difficult as somebody who doesn't have the opportunity to play Modern all the time, and the entire format is in flux. So seeing 150 list from a league doesn't mean that's the best deck anymore, or that's the one that you should move into or spec on, etc. We've got to let this format breathe, and so I'm just going to kind of take this one as a break even in that regard. When it comes to Standard, though, this has been a bit of a miss coming out of the Pro Tour that we just had. The MagicCon, and it's basically fallen into obscurity as there's no great deck to leverage it in what is a red-dominated format. And as an aside, I do think that's a fine problem to have in regards to how Standard looks, just a really good red deck. But it does mean, again, I did miss on my call-out for this being a Standard player as well. So again, we're just kind of at a loss here, a break-even at best. The last thing I did mention about this card was its popularity in Commander, as both a card in the 99 and a Commander. And while it has remained one of the top commanders for the set, it hasn't taken off in the way that I thought it would. So I'm going to chalk up the commander side of things as a loss. But I think once the price continues to drop from the $50 it was during the modern shakeup, we'll start to see it blossom in commander. I do actually believe it was the price that held this card back from being more popular in commander.
Yeah.
Time will tell. But from a commander standpoint, I'm going to take this one as a loss as well. I really thought, despite the price tag, people would have moved in, but I do think that was the barrier to entry there because this deck isn't terribly offensive if you use Ketramos as a commander, and so the kind of theme you want to play into, working with cards in exile, etc., like pulling a lot of levers. People like to do that, like just spin your wheels. Cool. That is kind of what more casual commander does.
Yeah.
But people aren't going to pay that much money for that kind of commander, so that was an oversight on my part. Then when you put this inside the 99 of decks overall, it works really well with everything that's going on with commander. Farewell is a hell of a card, and these two go hand in hand. Relic of Progenitus, Bajuka Bog, Withered Wretch, all these other things that can just remove cards from graveyards from the game all kind of work with Ketramos, and so there's a lot of opportunity there for the future. So overall, I thought this card was overhyped. When it comes to modern play, I think we're sitting at just right. In standard, I think we saw a loss in that regard to what I said. In commander, it's a loss for what I said. So for me, this is, like I said, a break even at best, most likely negative. But there's a lot of opportunity here as well for this card.
Yeah, I think this is one of those cards that I think long term is at least a $30 card, because I think it just creeps up for like EDH with fringe like stacks lists or stuff like that. And it's not something that I think needs like a content creator push. I think it may be a card that, as far as EDH goes, is not necessarily your Invisibles, but like just the other side of the Invisibles who are coming into the LGS and experimenting with the format. As far as standard, I mean, we were both there when it was the hottest thing under the sun, when it was spoiled and very quickly fell off. But I think it'll be interesting to see if there is a pioneer shell for it.
Yeah.
Once we get back to that realm, if that may actually see it go back up to where it was. My under, on the other hand, was Loot the Pathfinder. He is 5 mana with green, blue, red, and 2 being the cost for a 2/4. Double strike, vigilance, haste, and he has 3 exhaust abilities corresponding to the color. Green is green tap, add 3 of any one color. Blue is exhaust, blue tap, recall. Red is red tap, bolt. Now, when we recorded this episode, it was sitting at, I think, like $3 to $4, somewhere in there. And I thought that this could be long-term a $5 to $10 card, and boy, was I wrong. Yet again, I refuse to learn the lesson of, hey guys, there's collector boosters, there's a million versions of these cards. They're probably not going to be good in terms of financials, unless you're going for like the Fracture Foil, which I think I did shout out when I picked it, that was one that I thought long-term had the greatest room to move.
Yeah.
Because they're, as strange as it is to say, I think it's one of the first truly unique things that Magic has done with premium cards in years. But my thought for this card was purely EDH. It's in good colors for combo. It's in good colors for 75%, or I guess tier 3. Would that be the equivalent of like a 75? Whatever the tier system is, like a tier 3 deck as well as a tier 5. Whatever the minutia between those and it actually is. But it just hasn't taken off. It has not on EDH Rec seen a really big surge in adoption in either the 99 or as a commander. It is still one of the more popular commanders for the set, but it's not taken off anywhere else. And I think part of that is, there are options that are better in Jeskai that do, or not Jeskai, that are in Rug that do these same things. And it doesn't matter that this is a cute little gopher, maybe. It just hasn't led to adoption. It just doesn't have the impact. And frankly, I know I said the 2/4 body was kind of relevant. I don't think it is in hindsight. I think this was just a straight miss on my part. Not even remotely close.
Yeah, I agree that a lot of this is hindsight and looking at loot on rec, looking at the combos via commander spellbook, etc. I think where a lot of people lost it was the fact that this does kind of combo out pretty easily, so you can continue to use the exhaust abilities and effectively go infinite with them. But the overlap between aggressively comboing with loot versus casually comboing with loot doesn't really exist. They're two different circles, and I'll get back to that in a moment. And then aggressively comboing out and CEDH viable, again, are two different circles, so there's just no overlap here. And what I mean by this is that to aggressively combo out with loot, you can actually, just give me one moment, you can combo out with Hullbreaker, Horror, and Soul Ring. Cool. This is not the best card. This is not a card you would want to combo out with those two cards. There are better things to be doing that actually win you the game. Loot is, again, a lot of lever pulling, which is good for casually comboing out, which means that you basically combo out with Deadeye Navigator. And that card is so far out of vogue. It's funny that it was actually given to us as promos in Ravnica Remastered and then shoved down our throats with the SpongeBob Secret Lair. Moreover, a ham sandwich combos with Deadeye Navigator. So,
it's not saying a lot.
Exactly. What are you doing with this?
Yeah.
So again, your casual combos are with Deadeye Nav. Okay. Deadeye Nav and Peregrine Drake are a lot simpler to combo out with. They're in mono blue and a better option overall. You're effectively doing the same thing with loot with the green ability, but then you just get to draw infinite cards and bolt. And that is, again, a lot of levers to pull. So we're kind of looking at the same thing that I was talking about with Ketramos.
Yeah.
But the adoption rate is seemingly similar on both of these cards, where the people who just want to do that, who just want to dirtle for a while, really haven't adopted these cards. So I think it could be two lessons. The one is, as you mentioned, because of fractured foils, because of all these alt art things, picking the regular version, looking at the regular version of what is not like the tentpole card for the set, but like the icon of the set, the character icon for the set,
the mascot.
Yeah, might not be the best look anymore. That's one. You want to go for the higher end version of that. And then the second one is maybe people just don't want to pull levers that aggressively anymore. Maybe they don't want so many options. They want to be more compact. And so I think that's a lesson for both of us here, from looking at my Ketramos pick and then looking at the loot pick, is just there's a lot to do here with both of these cards, and people might just not be engaged with Commander that way anymore. And that's a good lesson to learn too, because that impacts how we navigate Commander as a format to play and to speculate on, or as the LGS to start facing cards in a case.
Yeah.
If people aren't interested in loot, then there's no reason to face your case with the non-high-end versions of loot. Ketramos at least sees modern play, so you can put them in the case. It has a push behind it. Loot does not. So just putting the regular mythic loot out is just dead real estate as an LGS. You could put more cards out there that are more meaningful, probably uncommons from the set that move better. Stock Up would be a better case card than loot, right? Like, there you go. Or the Black Enchantment that's seeing play in Vintage and Modern. The Edict enchantment. I can never remember the name of this thing. Or the Makeup that's in Hollow One. These are all uncommons that are probably better in your case or in your binders than loot.
Yeah.
Just for these reasons.
I can't remember ever having been asked for loot. Ever.
There it is.
So just dead wrong.
Yeah. So these are all lessons that we can learn over time that are meaningful for all levels of engagement of what we're trying to do here. Yeah. Moving on to Just Right. I had Full Throttle, which is an extra combat spell, except it's like one of the most expensive non-creature extra combat spells from a mana value standpoint. It costs 4 and 2 red, or sorcery. And after this main phase, there are 2 additional combat phases. And then at the beginning of each combat this turn, untap all creatures that attack this turn. That last little bit is relevant. It's not on all of the extra combat cards, but it's useful. And according to Rec, Full Throttle isn't played in any of the most popular extra combat decks, but it's listed still as a new card with 15% synergy to the theme. So I'm really perplexed on what we're seeing here in regards to play on Rec.
Yeah.
I know I joked around this card being played honestly, quote unquote, when we reviewed it, but checking in on the links to both the extra combat theme and then Full Throttle itself, it appears that's actually the case. People are just playing this honestly in decks that just don't want to take all the combats. So as this was my just right call, I think I missed because it's not really showing up in the theme I expected, but I'm actually more excited about where it landed, truthfully, and I'll take that as a win. People aren't using this to combo out like they are Aggravated Assault, etc. They're just kind of playing this honestly in decks that just want to enter combat like once or twice, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, and I'll bring up Rec real quick on screen so people can see. Ironically, Loot the Pathfinder. Sure, why not? But then like Othari, that triggers at the beginning of combat. You just make a bunch of little shitters. Kalia of the Vast, you just get the double demon trigger, and you have the ability to double combo. Storm, Force of Nature, you don't need all the combat steps, but storming that card is actually pretty useful. Xenagos, God of Revels, etc. Just kind of looking to enter combat and just swing like once or twice with a couple big ding-dongs past the turn, and then do it again. You're not looking to Godo Bandit Warlord the table out in one combat step. Like, that's the difference here. I don't even think Godo is actually anywhere on the Full Throttle rec page, as like it's not a high synergy card for whatever reason. That's things like Ruinous Ultimatum, clear the board. Like, that's
okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of stuff we're looking at here when it comes to this. I can't explain it, but I'm happy about it because it means you're not like that person at the table. Extra combat steps can be a bit cumbersome. That could catch some frowns, and you might have to jump off that deck if your group is a little more casual. But we're not seeing that. So I'm wrong. This wasn't a just right call. This is probably an overhyped call, or just a nothing burger for the last episode.
You know, I fully expected, same as you, and I am still stunned that this did not take off with the extra combat steps.
Yeah.
Crowd. I just don't get it. And I don't think it's the mana cost, because the decks that are stacking combat steps generate so much mana and are so efficient, it doesn't matter. Like, even Godo can 6-on-1 is fine. You can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, assuming you're allowing Crypt and Lotus, the cards that should be there. But I don't know how this hasn't been taken up more. The thing that's especially shocking to me is, this is a card that has 2 premiums. I mean, I don't know if you call Extended Art premium anymore. It's every card, every set, that I don't know if that counts. But it has the unique first place foil, and that's still only $10. Mm-hmm. It is mind-boggling to me that this card is not more money.
Yeah. So a miss for the just right, but insofar as being played honestly, that was a win. So
just shocking.
Yeah, right. All right. So
my just right was something that was a little more unique. Obviously, having more of an LGS perspective, wanted to start incorporating that in the episode. So this episode, just right, was that there's support, Wizards of the Coast support for the new set, for new format, standard support, everything was right where it should be. And I changed between the time I picked it and where it was, with it being a little bit lower than it was supposed to be. Well, it turns out standard, through the community actually, rather than Wizards of the Coast, is getting more support than I thought. As I touched on in our Patreon or patron-only episode that we just recorded, we're up on pre-orders for new sets, and people are buying in-stock standard sets. We're actually selling through Aetherdrift at a reasonable rate for a set that came out, a lifetime ago, basically, in terms of set releases. And it's nice to see that hasn't happened before. So it's kind of a loss, because Wizards support kind of waned a little bit, but the community picked up with it, and in that way it was correct. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's seriously very excited for. I touch on it a little bit more, like I said, in our patron-only episode, which you should get hooked up on the Patreon if you are not, in order to listen to that. And I think it's just great that they're, even again, and you and I said this till into the clouds was they just have to support the format with meaningful prize support, and it'll start taking off.
Yeah.
And they announced we're supporting it with support. We have these events, and they have just been going along with that. Nothing new, and it's been working. So I am grateful for it, regardless if it was just right or too low.
Yep. I can't explain why this happened, but in a store full of pre-release players last night, there were still at least 2 players that showed up for standard. We had a Friday pre-release.
Yeah. How? On a pre-release? That doesn't happen.
Yeah. Start at the same time as everything else, so about 6:30. Like, they had to clear off all the TTRPG tables. Basically, all but like maybe 4 tables in total were dedicated to pre-release, and we still had people show up for standard. Like, that's kind of where things are right now, where people are just engaged in that format regardless of like the texture of it. No matter what you feel about the BNR, people are still interested in playing this format regardless. So yeah, there's something there for sure. Picks?
Very interesting to see. Yes, picks.
All right. I'm going to go first.
Go for it.
So my pick this week is Old Gnawbone. And this is not in the face of Dragons of Tarkir. This has just been something that's been going on for a while. So Old Gnawbone from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, just a mythic rare that exploded and then kind of dropped down in popularity, so got a reprint, has been picking up for a fairly long time on a fairly steady slope, as we can see on stocks. But it's kind of exploded right around Aetherdrift and just been on the steady upward trajectory. And I know that is most likely because of Dragons of Tarkir, because Old Gnawbone helps you cast those dragons. It's 5 double green for a 7/7 flyer that says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. So in every base green dragons deck you're ever going to see, Old Gnawbone is either going to be in the 99 or will have been considered for the 99. When I was taking my notes on this last week, CK was buying 30 at $29. They're now buying 34 at $33, so we're seeing an increase in there. They had 8 for sale at 48, and I believe that number is still the same. TCG Player, there are 86 listings with a market price of about $40. There are now 56 listings with a market price of about $46. And when I put this on my list in October of 2022, because again, we've been watching this for a while, CK was buying 54 at $20. And there were 226 listings on TCG Player for about $32. So we can see just the steady reduction in supply over time because there's just been continuous demand, especially after. There's the Secret Lair series. That was the Beetle and Grimm's, I believe, Secret Lair. It has the kind of book promo to it. And then it was also put on the list. So that's kind of where we saw that dip in the stocks pricing, and as we headed up towards where we are now. Insofar as its playability in Commander goes in general, up top we'll see this in Dragons, then we'll see it in tokens decks, like anybody that wants to just crap out any type of token, Academy Manufacturer, hell of a card, and then decks that want to make treasures in particular, like Agnes, and some other odds and ends. So it kind of fits the bill across all of those. And as we continue to mention, I feel like we said it a number of times this week, but that's because we've recorded a number of episodes this week. Dragons is by far the most popular creature-based theme according to EDHREC, so it's no surprise that people are using Old Gnawbones in every one of those decks. Every one of the Dragons decks is utilizing it because they can. They play green, cool, awesome. And it's one of the easiest, most reliable ways to just generate oodles of mana, ensuring you can cast all your large mana value dragons, because every dragon deck wants to do that. It doesn't matter if you're playing 5-color, if you're a teamer, if you're Jund, 2-color, if you're playing green, which is, again, almost every single dragon deck. Old Gnawbone helps you do the thing. Moving down a level, another popular theme we see is tokens, put that in quotes, but we're mainly looking at value commanders that either lean into needing a large number of tokens to do their thing, or commanders that can combo out with a critical mass of tokens. So these are commanders like Korvald, Fake Curse King, just want you to sacrifice stuff. Chatterfang, Squirrel General, makes a squirrel whenever you make anything else. And then Jolene, the Plunder Queen, which was kind of interesting to see because I thought that commander was like a little bit of a nothing burger. And let me see if I can find Jolene real quick. That's Rashmi.
I'm gonna have
there
that
she is.
Stuck in my head all day now.
So Jolene is 2, a green and a red for a 2/2. Whenever a player attacks one or more of your opponents, that attacking player creates a treasure token. If you would create one or more treasure tokens, instead create those tokens plus an additional treasure token. Then it has an activated ability of sacrifice 5 treasure tokens, put 5+1/+1 counters on Jolene. So you can basically just make one really big commander and just start doming people, just punching them out in combat. Cool. These are all like just general token decks, although Jolene is looking a little bit more for treasures. Then another layer down, we see a lot of decks that key off treasures and or artifact mana. So these are commanders like Roxanne, Starfall, Savant, Rashmi, and Ragavan to a little bit of a degree, and then Vazi, Keen Navigator. These all are going to give you value for your treasures overall. And this is a bit of an iceberg of casual strategies that appeal to a decent base, though Dragons does most of that lifting, and it means we're kind of serving a pretty wide audience that only really grows over time because we get more Dragons, we get more commanders that care about tokens, we get more commanders that care about treasures. So Old Gnawbone just fits the bill for all of these things, and like there's a pretty deep iceberg here for it. In regards to timeline, when I was taking my notes, there were only 276 copies. If I had to just hedge a guess right now, we're probably down to 200 or less. And then when I was taking my notes, the comic book store, if you remember them, they supported a lot of people on the Star City tour. They gave people like the Hunter or Forest Green polos to wear.
Yeah.
They had 21 LP copies at $45 with $5 shipping, so they already expected this to be a $50 card. And then on page 2 of listings, G2K Games Norton had 12 LP copies for $45, $5 shipping. So another vendor that expected this to be $50. And then Tarkin's Cards had 136 near mint copies at $60. So we're basically just watching people kind of set thresholds, and whenever they're going to cross them, you just up the listing again and again and again. You can see these like $5, $10, $15 breakpoints all throughout. This did sell about 6 copies total per day across near mint and LP, so that was basically like 45 days worth of supply before we just drained, and we're going to get there pretty quickly. This card's going to zero out, so if you have copies or you're looking for copies, now's the time. Reprint equity. So outside of that secret layer printing, we've seen 1 reprint of this on the list, and I think we could be insulated from a serious reprinting, as this is a D&D reference to a named character. Old Gnawbones is a legendary dragon for a reason. This is unlike the Ancient Dragon cycle from Baldur's Gate, which is getting a reprint in the special guest slot from the Final Fantasy set, and the Final Fantasy Through the Ages thing, because it's legendary. Those are not Ancient Copper Dragon, Ancient Silver Dragon, etc. Just kind of relate to a type of dragon in general, not a very specific dragon. But that said, I'm not a huge Vorthos for Final Fantasy lore, so I could kind of be off there. I just don't think there's a named dragon that mirrors Old Gnawbones in Final Fantasy lore.
No, the only named dragon really is Bahamut, and it's always like an ally that just wipes a planet out.
Yeah, so after the Final Fantasy set, I think we're just pretty insulated from here. And this is well and like above and beyond anything we'd ever see in a Commander precon. This just goes too hard. Then real quick, by quantity, I have at least 2 of these. One is from the Beetle and Grimm's Secret Lair, and one is the promo pack version, and I'm happy owning them for my personal use because I have no locals that are really interested in Dragon Typal. Otherwise, I would be swinging into this to move to them with this set release. I've mentioned it before. I've heard people be more interested in dinosaurs locally.
Yeah.
And we have a lot more people shifting into more aggressive style of commander play. Not quite CEDH. They're getting there, but Dragons is too far down that competitive totem pole for me to kind of move into this card to serve locals.
Yeah. Yeah, I have loved this card since it was in Standard. I remember it being floated on every buy list for like $3 below low because it was so liquid. It was good in Standard, and it was obviously just bonkers good in EDH. So everyone, this isn't exactly a card that's been flying under the radar, but I am surprised to learn it is $50. It's been a $30 card forever in my mind. That's just always what it was. I think, like you said, with the set coming out, with Dragons being as popular as they are, and with us being restricted like to a specific, not really plane, but setting with this card. The only way we're going to get it is in another secret lair further down the line, which doesn't seem very likely without a Dungeons and Dragons tie-in. And I don't think that's going to be another movie, so probably be a while.
Yep, absolutely. All right.
My pick, and this is, again, kind of going with more of an LGS perspective, I am shouting out, the specific card I'm going to cite here is Wheel of Fortune. And I'm shouting out reserved list EDH staples because not a lot of them have started to move price-wise. But some of them have started to move liquidity-wise, both for us in store and looking at TCG player data through the tool that you made. And looking at sales velo, you can see that now that we have these EDH events coming, now that we have Command Fest back, now that there's more circuits, more events popping up than there were before, people are starting to get out and play more. And part of that is, okay, I'm going to finally spend the money to get the cards I wanted for so long that I didn't necessarily have to because I was just playing with the same 4 or 5 people. With these big events, trade binders start opening, people start getting those cards, and all of a sudden you start to see the velo pick up, and then the price goes as well. Now, Wheel of Fortune is currently a $300 card, so obviously, realistically, I don't see it growing much past 350 to 400. This is more as like, hey, this kind of card that has opportunity, your Gilded Drakes, your Sarah's Sanctums, that kind of stuff is what you should start looking at, because as these events start to happen, as CEDH tournaments continue to propagate everywhere, more and more these cards are going to start to move, because as people use their store credit to pick up the cards, pay cash to pick up the cards, that supply is drying up because they're reserved list. And yes, they absolutely have a cap. Like I said, Wheel of Fortune is never going to be $1,000. It will never have that demand. Well, I say that. But these cards do have room to grow, and I think this is the time to start looking at them as these events have been announced before we really get into the swing of, like, I don't want to say EDH season, because it's not like there's a season for that, but almost EDH season.
Yeah.
Historically, when they've scheduled Command Fest and stuff like that, they've always been in the spring and summer months. People are more apt to travel to places. They want to go see things, check it out. That's when you're going to have these events, and that's when you're going to see these prices start to go along with the increase in liquidity.
Yep. No, I agree. And this is one of those things where it's just like, what are some foundational cards or some cards you can lean on for CEDH that you can expect to sit on, move in time, make a profit on, or maybe just pick up now ahead of just general interest? Yawgmoth's Will is another one that kind of waxes and wanes.
Yeah.
But the more the context of CEDH changes, the more powerful that card can get. So alongside Wheel, that one's a really good look. Consultation, again, is another one that's on and off because they're never going to reprint that. I don't think that's RL, but it's as close.
It's not reserve list, but there's no way with the formatting and everything else they ever touch it. Yeah.
Yep. Grim Monolith, same way. They're obviously reserve list, but you're not going to get a mono rock that's more efficient than that. And I don't think there's a singular deck in the format that doesn't want that. Mox Diamond as well. You can take the chance. I think the foils might be as expensive as the Stronghold version.
Yes. They are the same price now, which never would have guessed that.
Yeah, and in some instances, you might be able to pick them up because they were just listed as damage. That from the vault is just notably terrible. Relics, everything comes out as a Pringle. So you might be able to pick them up on the cheap and just create your own little humidor with a 65% packs. You can get those off Amazon, or I think there's like Foil Armor is a company that's dedicated to it now as well. There are options to kind of flatten those out and take advantage of them. Memory Jar sits on that list again from the vault because that one was just stacked to the gills.
Yep, it was so good.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here. We talked about it before. We do like a yearly episode using the Moxfield link of like the most.
What are the 100 biggest staples in the format?
Yep, and you can kind of go down that list as well and start looking at those too, because again, the more the context of the format changes, the more cards like this move up and down, and it's never a bad opportunity to attempt to get ahead of the curve, and Wheel of Fortune is one of those. They refuse to deal with Thassa's Oracle, so why not combo from the graveyard? So I love this pick overall. Of note, Wheel is also one of those cards that comes in foreign revised, so
Yes.
you can get the revised white border, you can get foreign white border, and you can get foreign black border on top of that. So there's also opportunity there if you know people who are interested in black border cards. Foreign black border in some languages is going to be cheap, or I guess every language now should be cheaper than the beta
Just
equivalent.
about, yeah.
Yep. And foreign white border could also be easier to move depending on price because it could be cheaper. So there's also opportunity to either arbitrage from card market, or maybe just locally you have the opportunity to pick up some foreign versions and then move them to people who are seeking. So I think Wheel of Fortune in particular as a call out is a really good look for those additional reasons. Yeah.
Yep.
And then, like you said, to EDH season. So we have this Uber event in Pittsburgh coming up. I forgot the name of it. It's insane. It's got like it's like a CEDH for duels or something like that. It's like the main event is CEDH, and that doesn't start the season. That's kind of like at the tail end in August. But Star City most certainly solicited social media for where do you want to see more command fests.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to see this push. We talked about it a little bit in the Hunter Burton Memorial Review. There was a CEDH event there, enough to get notable people to come out. Notable personalities were at that event. So we will continue to see that happen. And when you have that, that means that cards like this are going to move on-prem. They're going to continue to push. So it's a great look, a great call out.
Thanks.
Anything else for this week?
I got nothing.
All right. So for at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, YouTube, and Blue Sky, I am at Halt. I am Reptar. You are
At Damon_Thurston.
We'll see you next week.